Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Connor Canny podcast with me, Connor Canny. And in today's podcast, I want to talk about things that we can do as adults to heal from the damage that may have been caused to some of us by growing up in a toxic environment with a dysfunctional family with potentially abusive, especially emotionally abusive parents or a parent, right? If you want to check out podcast number 7, I believe it is, I'll put a link below, which you can check that out first if you want. Turn this off right now, open it in a new tab if you're on YouTube, and look at it and check it out. And I talk briefly about what it's like to grow up in a dysfunctional family, what some of the things that we feel, those of us that grew up in those dysfunctional families, some of the things we feel and the way it affects us short, medium and long term. And the fact that other people cannot really relate to that. The people who didn't grow up in those kind of environments, they grew up in healthy, untoxic environments. And in this podcast, I want to talk about some things I think that have helped me heal from some of the emotional scars that I was given growing up as a child, as a teenager and as a young man. Now at 26 and a half, at the time this podcast is going out, I'm somebody who has a very good relationship with my mum. My mum was not wasn't horrible and abusive. She made a few mistakes, she said some nasty things, but her energy was more one of frustration of being in an environment with a man who was extremely domineering, controlling, a bully to both her and her children, me and my brother. And my relation, she is healed as a woman. It's lovely to see her have healed and really become herself and allowed to be herself over the last few years. And me and my brother both have a great relationship with my mum. And she's very nurturing, loving, supportive, encouraging, like all human beings, and particularly like all women in their own way. And us, yes, gentlemen, in our own way, we can do it too. But in the feminine way, we know what women are like, can be like. No offense, ladies. In the old, the other side of the coin of being kind and nurturing is, women can fly off the handles in certain ways sometimes, but so can we as men in other ways. And we need to learn to be tolerant of each other's differences between each other and how to relate to each other and all that. But for the most part, my mum is a very strong, loving, caring woman, great mother, and anyway, she's played a really big part in my development as a young man, and in the healing process of all the the bullshit that I went through as a child and as a teenager and as a young man from my dad, right? So what could I talk about? Some things that we can all do, because I also am aware that some people don't have a parent, a mother or a father in their life who they can get on with and who can help them out and say things to them and be there for them, as I have. And I consider myself to be fortunate and lucky in that regard. But because some people, first of all, it's both their parents, some people that go through it, but there are things that are nothing to do with my mother that I've made myself go through, and things that have just happened that I've noticed that anyone can do to heal from the emotional abuse of the past. So because each individual's situation is unique, the healing process and that therefore requires is going to be similarly unique, right? And each individual requires all of us are different, first of all, and each individual requires their own unique healing process, right? And all of us also take, regardless of what happens to us as human beings in general, we all are also unique individuals who who are affected by certain things in certain ways, in different ways, right? But there are some very basic principles which you guys can then, what's the word? Tailor to your own personal needs and try out and see what works for you, they might give you some other ideas about your own, if these things don't work for you. I'm sure they will to some degree, but try other things, but there are some basic things. Now, I went to one therapy session. Now, do I recommend therapy to anyone? I recommend you try it out and see how you feel. That's what I recommend. I reckon everyone tries therapy. Maybe you're there at one therapy session with someone, with a professional, or a couple of therapy sessions, or 10, or maybe you go for years. Now, for me personally, I'd already talked a lot about my dad to a lot of friends and a lot of other people. So I was very open about some of his behaviours, but I didn't realise, I couldn't fully process until I've moved away and gone without contact with him for a long time and been in a healthy environment with my mum. I didn't realise the full extent of the impact, right? The great saying, you don't know what you got till it's gone, about good things. It's also, if you have a lot of bad things going on and then you go, you get to a point in your life where you don't have that negative energy in your life, and you're in a positive environment, then you don't know what how bad the bad shit was until you no longer are experiencing it in a direct way, right? But then you realise, oh shit, you still got a long way to go. So what would I say? So yeah, therapy. I'd recommend anyone who's been through any kind of abuse. I'm not really qualified to talk about sexual abuse because I've never experienced it, and I don't know anyone in my immediate family that has. I know a few people, friends and acquaintances, that have experienced some form of sexual abuse. I don't know. They don't talk about it all the time, but I'm personally not qualified to talk about that kind of thing with anyone, so I'm not even going to attempt to. But I would say, just by common sense, I'd say that definitely going to therapy for that probably would be my first option I would suggest to anyone. But I'm not going to go into detail about trying to pretend that I have any first-hand experience in that or the healing process. That's a whole other kettle of fish, right? But in terms of like physical abuse, as I said in the podcast that was about growing up, the podcast I'll put below in this YouTube video, I wasn't particularly physically abused. That really, like, my mum slapped me on the wrist more than my dad ever touched me, but there were like a handful of times when I was in my mid to late teens and as in my early 20s when my dad was physical with me. But for the most part, he wasn't physically abusive and didn't really like that. He was very physically domineering when he wanted to be a bully, right? He had a very physical energy about him, right? He was definitely a cunt from time to time in that respect. But the main thing is the emotional abuse. So if you've been emotionally abused, verbally abused all the time, constantly criticised, constantly put down, constantly gaslit, constantly made to feel like you're nothing all the time, everything's your fault, never the parents' fault, never. And this goes, you can extrapolate this to abusive relationships, romantic relationships, some friendships, boss to employee, employer to employee environments, toxic environments, whatever. But as I'm speaking more specifically about family environments and being a child who grew up in a toxic environment, I'm assuming most, and also that's going to be the title of the video. I'm assuming most people watching this are people who grew up in that environment. So the good thing about therapy and talking about these things is, one, it allows you to express things and get them out of your head, right? It also, I'm not a therapist or a doctor, by the way. I'm not professional. I'm just a layman, right? Who's been through some stuff and who has healed from it, and who's just giving his advice as if I was just an acquaintance or somebody you met in a pub who was just giving you advice or whatever. So I'm not a professional, so don't take this as professional advice, okay? Just thought I'd better say that. Anyway, anyone who has been through anything, I definitely would recommend therapy, because therapy really, really is what the fuck am I talking about? Sorry, guys. Repeating myself about therapy thing about 5 times. 1 second, guys. Let me think. Let me gather my thoughts. This is ADHD, actually. Okay, so like I was saying, the good thing about therapy is you get to speak to someone, you get to talk about something, which oftentimes is something by the nature of the environment, the toxic environments that you grow up in. You're not allowed to speak or criticise the parent or the parents about these things, or even suggest what they're doing is wrong, or definitely not how it makes you feel, right? Fuck that. Yeah. This is something that a lot of people that don't grow up in these environments can't understand when you try to explain it to them, right? Because they didn't face that kind of thing. They're allowed to talk openly about stuff. They didn't have to worry about all this shit that we had to worry about, right? One of the things that I've found extremely useful is talking to other people about it. Now, oftentimes it's difficult because a lot of people that you talk to about it don't. I'm lucky in the sense I've had other family members, including my mum and other people, who I've spoken to about all this stuff, and it's and friends and other people who some of them have gone through like similar things in their life, so they know where I'm coming from. But even if you can't talk to anyone, another thing I'd recommend you do, even if you, regardless of whether you are able to go to therapy or not, I'd recommend everyone try to go to therapy, by the way, at least to try it out. Regardless of whether you're able to go to therapy or not, or regardless of whether you have anyone to speak to who isn't necessarily a therapist, right? I would also recommend writing things down, maybe even buying some kind of recorder, like my podcast recorder, maybe not as expensive as this, maybe, whatever. Just the act of speaking it gets it out of your head, right? Or even a camera you want to speak into. The act of expressing these emotions gets them out of your head, out of your nervous system. It releases tension in your body and in your brain and in your mind, right? And it allows you to feel the emotions, process them, the ones that you weren't allowed to feel when and it allows you to then take responsibility for the rest of your life and move on. Another thing I'd recommend is exercise. Exercise is great even if you're feeling, angry or sad or depressed or whatever in the short term, even if it's not to do with anything that happened in your childhood. we all know that exercise is a great booster for the short and medium term, and indeed for the long term, right? Something which a guy called Elliot Hulse has really, got me interested in. I've never done this. I probably will in the future. I think I definitely will in the future, be incorporating this into my life. There's something called bioenergetics, right? And this is not just for people who grew up in, horrible environments with dysfunctional families, but because our society to some degree is inherently dysfunctional in the respect that we were taught to not express our emotions as well. Even if you grew up in a healthy environment, right? We went to school. We were told to, when you're supposed to cry, when you feel like crying, don't cry. When you feel like laughing, it's not appropriate to laugh right now, right? And I'm not judging any of this. This is all what it is, man. It's just the patriarchal system that we live in that had the purpose of conditioning us to go to work in factories or whatever, and to go to war, right? That's why school was invented originally. Now, I'm not interested in like putting down teachers or putting down schools or anything, but the fact is that it does affect our nervous system. It does affect, we have lots of things in our body because that are unexpressed, right? A lot of emotions in our body that are unexpressed: joy, laughter, anger, sadness, many other emotions I can't think of anymore. They're the main ones, right? That we haven't expressed. We've got them trapped in there, right? And what bioenergetics is, I think it's called bioenergetics or bioenergenics, I can't remember, is where you and somebody else as well, I think, gets these out of your nervous system. Like, so you might have cathartic outbursts, right? There's a great video of Elliot Hulse on YouTube. I recommend everyone check it out, called No Longer a Brain Slave, right? I think that's what it's called, No Longer Brain Slave, where he's getting out. He talks about this stuff and he gets it out of his system, and he's like smashing, like I think it's like a bat. Is it not a baseball bat? Some kind of exercise thing, object, instrument. He's holding his hand, smashing it on the massage desk, screaming, shouting, rah, 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 crying, laughing, moving his body all in kinds of ways, and so that his muscles untense themselves. You can get massages that do this. There's different ways of breathing. There's different ways of opening your mouth. I'm not an expert on this, so I recommend anyone who's interested check it out. That definitely will be a great way of healing from all the trapped negative emotions in your body and mind, right? So what have we got so far? We've got therapy, be it in the form of professional therapy or by talking to people about it, writing things down, making recordings like this even if it's just for yourself to get out of your system. Maybe you can, if you listen to yourself or watch yourself on a camera, get a camera, film yourself, whatever, right? To try to get this out of your system, right? And obviously, if you're in a really dysfunctional, horrible place that you're still living in, I recommend get the fuck out of there as soon as you can. And I know that's easier said than done for some people. Some people can't. So I don't know anyone's individual situation. So I'm not in a position to tell you whether you should leave or not. But all I can say from my own experience and what a lot of other people say that grew up in these families, if they're really bad, get the fuck out there, right? If they're not changing, get the fuck out there. Because I spoke to these people. Can't be some people cannot be reasoned with, right? And that's the reason they're doing what they're doing in the first place. And you can make all the excuses you want for them. You can feel sympathy for them. You can try to be reasonable. You can try to bring them your problem and tell them, listen, say in a polite way. You can get angry. You can do whatever, all the different tactics that a normal human being would respond to and change. But some people just aren't going to change. They have no intention of doing it, right? And this is something that other people that you try to talk to about this stuff, who haven't grown up in this environment, they can't understand it. Like, what do you mean? Why haven't you spoken to him? No, it's not about that. It's about control, and it's about not accepting responsibility for their actions, and it's about making you feel like shit. And that's what a lot of dysfunctional families are about. And like I say, whilst I feel sorry for these people, and I feel sorry particularly for my dad, it's like it comes to a point where, like, listen, motherfucker, I've tried everything, and you haven't taken responsibility. It's not a question of punishment. It's not a question of payback. It's not a question of bitterness. It's not a question of me not taking, not being sympathetic or anything. It's the question of I need to get on with my fucking life, and this is just, you're just continuing to do this. So bye-bye. Right? Now, am I recommending that everybody do this? No, because I don't know what your personal situation is. But first of all, what I can say from personal experience is getting away from these people, having minimal contact or no contact with abusive parents or whatever, you start to heal because you're not under the constant fucking strain of their bullshit, right? Of their abuse, of their, their constant trying to make you feel like shit, their games, whatever the fuck it is, whatever the unique situation is. It all comes down to similar things at the end of the day, you know what I mean? And the next thing I'd say that, apart from, Reiki is another thing, which is similar to, it's a kind of hand therapy where you almost, I don't know if it's massage, my mum has had it before, where you express emotions, especially tears and anger and sadness come out, and they relax your body, it's unexpressed emotions in the body, right? Reiki is a good thing. I think it's something that can help, definitely. What else would I recommend to anyone in terms of healing, and what things? Listening to positive things, listening to things like this, people like me and others talking about this kind of thing. So it reaffirms there are other people out there who know what you're going through. Watching positive things, being in a happy environment, being around friends and family and acquaintances that are positive, doing things you like I said, exercise in general, all of the things that keep people happy in general, but even people who haven't grown up in a negative environment, right? All of these things will help us as well, people who did grow up in a toxic environment. And they'll help you to heal. They'll keep you from overthinking all this stuff all the time, and they'll keep you, on a, what's the term? On a baseline level of moving forward and happiness in general that you need to maintain, and so you don't fall into a depression, or you don't let the past break you and completely destroy you, right? So I recommend all the things I would recommend to anyone who wants to just live a happy, fulfilled life anyway. Do what you love. Find something. Another thing is, you may have a lot of anger inside you after a while, because those of us that grow, as I have had in the past, especially in the past year or two, and now I feel way more calm and I've got a lot of stuff out of my system I needed to get out. You may have a lot of anger, I probably do. And whilst I said all the other things that will help you get the anger and the upset and the hurt and everything, and the unexpressed emotions and even the joy and pain in some regards, right, that you weren't allowed to feel at some certain things, when you've got all this stuff out, if you try to get some of that stuff out, there'll be there's a thing that that Carl Jung talks about. He calls it the dragon. Is it Carl Jung or is it Joseph Campbell? It might be both of them together. I can't remember. When he talks about the hero's journey, and when you first set out on your journey for the next part of your life, which you all inevitably will do, because you will, if you do start to heal from the past, you'll realize, I've got a lot of stuff. This is the next stage of my life. I'm going to move on, and I'm going to go and start on my mission of being the person I was supposed to be, and who is working towards worthy goals in life, who's working towards becoming a fulfilled individual, who's there to give to others, and who's there to create the life I want to live, right? the hero's journey is a thing, right? I won't go into detail about it now. There's other videos about the hero's journey on this channel and the Let You Be You Life Camp channel. For those of you that don't know what the Let You Be You Life Camp is, it's basically another YouTube channel I have. It's another platform by which I talk about these same issues through my podcast, and sometimes go into greater detail or analyze them, or just sometimes upload videos with a camera of me talking about these kind of things, right? That's what the Let You Be You Life Camp is. So the Let You Be You Life Camp and here there are videos about the hero's journey, but I would also recommend to just check out the hero's journey, and if you want a more detailed analysis of it, by a man called Joseph Campbell. Many of you may already know what the hero's journey is. Basically, you have to go out on a journey, and you're spiritually, mentally, and emotionally will go through certain stages. And through the first part, because a lot of us have been not allowed to do what we want to do in life, right? We are, even if we didn't grow up in a dysfunctional family, you will have to go out and carve your path in life. And the first thing, the metaphorical attitude, the metaphor they use to talk about the attitude that we have is one of like, no, fuck off to all the things, the demands and the beliefs that society has placed upon us, right? And we may be even more, those of us that grew up in where we weren't allowed to be ourselves, even more so than the rest of society, maybe even more angry and like, fuck off, you want to jump down everyone's throat, tell everyone to get the fuck off. No, I'm doing it my way. You can't see reason, right? I'm doing it my way. And what it is you need to get that out of your system, and eventually it'll balance out. And that's the place I'm at now, where I'm a lot more balanced than I was over the last 2 years. Over the last 2 years, I was very angry. And that's something that a lot of you may go through when you are on your process to heal, when you're on the healing process and you're moving towards becoming who you want to be. So I'd recommend during that time ways that you can keep calmer than you otherwise would, and don't completely go off the rails, is, like I say, exercise, being around positive people, all of the things that help people who don't even go through, haven't been through stuff we went through, right? What you'll find, I'll make more videos about these things in grade, going into documenting the journeys, the journey I've been through, and things that different stages you may feel along this journey of healing from emotional abuse or any kind of abuse in your childhood. But for this one, I hope, like I think I'm going to end it here. I may go into more detail in, listen to this back, go into more detail over on the Let You Be You Life Camp channel. But for now, I just wanted to talk about those things. So what do we have? What have I said so far? Therapy in some form, writing things down, which is therapeutic, being around positive people, and starting also, when you start to realize, I'm not a piece of shit, I'm not good, and I am a person who's worthy of being, I'm a sovereign human being who's worthy of, being respected and being, not being abused and put down and criticised all the time. I'm not a piece of shit, I'm actually a good person who's worthy of love, and I can do things. You start to see a positive momentum build up, and that's it's very, very encouraging. You might cry along the way. You will. You might have tears of joy that you haven't experienced in a long time, or you haven't ever experienced. In some cases, some people may, who've been through really bad stuff. And good luck to you all when you go through your journey of healing from the past. And I hope that you go on to live the life of happiness and fulfillment that you have always deserved, and that you eventually make it happen for yourself. It'll be hard, but it's okay. All right. From me, Connor Canny, from the Connor Canny podcast. Peace and love. Have a great day. Bye bye. I hope this podcast has helped you. Bye.